Hello, hello. What's up, guys? Welcome back. So I've got a concept. I have not been recording any YouTube videos. We've been talking about doing it for a while. It's just like it's always passed my mind, and I feel like we're focusing on streaming. But with the recent surge of you amazing people and kind of like the inspiration that I've been getting, I think this channel is going to be dedicated towards story readings, whether that be horror, fantasy, maybe even some roleplay ASMR. Not that kind. Don't look at me. Okay, by the way, guys, you want to say hi to Carter again? Carter's back. He's editing the video. I appreciate that very much. But I kind of want to put a disclaimer on my inspiration, on how the format's going to go, and who inspired me to do this, as well as shout outs to all the creators that I'm going to be reading. But I'm taking a huge inspiration from Creepcast. If you guys haven't seen it, please show it on screen, Carter. They're an amazing podcast, super hilarious, super funny. They read creepypasta stories, scary stories in general, and they have their own little like fun stuff going on, you know what I mean? So we're actually gonna be reading some stories from, I swear I just heard my cat. Uh, so we're gonna be reading some stories from their subreddit called Tales from the Creeps. We're gonna put that down in the description if you want to check it out. There's a bunch of amazing new artists posting on there, as well as, shout out to the Creepcast Reddit. But today we're gonna be reading The Sun Wept. I didn't read this whole thing yet. From what I witnessed, it is a multi-part series. Looks like part 1 is out right now. I feel like this is something that we're going to consistently be reading and updating with each part, because the title just kind of grabbed me. The Sun Wept by Sinners of Whispers. We're going to be putting their stuff in the description as well. Please remind me to do that, Carter. I don't want to get in trouble. But yeah. I'm just super excited to be doing all this. I'm gonna be new to this. Hopefully Carter can fix my fuck ups with my newness. I don't really know how to describe it. My how much of a beginner I am at recording stuff by myself. Also, hey, Carter, I think it's been like weirdly silent. Can you put like an ambient music in the background, or like some creepy shit? PlayStation 3 background audio. It's really cool. It's like really comforting. Okay, well, besides that, guys, I think we're gonna be reading The Sun Wept part 1. You guys ready? All right, let's lock in. The sky was gray and patchy, clouds lazily drifting by as if to prevent the sky itself from having a clear look at all that lived below. The black wet tar of the road seemed to stretch on forever into the horizon. If it weren't for the bony telephone poles just from the ground on each side, it would have felt like driving in place on some long, cracked treadmill. They'd been driving for nearly 3 hours to this nowhere town that went by the name of Verbena. The brute of a woman at the wheel just patiently drove with her window cracked, seeing her auburn hair whipping behind her as thin tendrils swept her jawline. She was wearing sunglasses, but there's no sun in sight, earning the judgmental glasses of her passenger seat rider. And the passenger was a grizzled middle-aged man whose dark skin pleasantly contrasted his gray suit. His hair was short, neatly shaved into the shape, with an expertly shaped mustache to adorn his shiny nose. He had an old pride about him, stern, as he was doing well for his age. I'm sorry, I messed up on that. In the backseat was a thin man of pale complexion and gaunt eyes, his black hair loosely combed back and eyebrows strikingly sharp. He was fighting for room in the back seat, reading over reports and documents about where they were going. Of the three, he was the shortest, but he had the roadmap of scars on his skin to prove he was as seasoned as his companions. I'd say that's a pretty good description. I kind of like how they use the mustache there. I don't know. I have no thoughts on anyone else yet, but I wonder what they're seasoned in. I don't know. Let's continue. The driver's rough voice spoke with a tilt of the head, her chin raising up as if to use it to center herself on the road. Why were we sent here again? Feels like a wasted time that we're being sent to some place nobody fucking knows because of a few stars out of place. Tucker cleared his voice and spoke up to be heard more clearly over the hum of the engine. I don't think we're here to handle the oddities of the sky. If I had to take a guess, we're going to be handling the matter of the children. The older man in the passenger turned his silvered head over his shoulder. What do you mean? If you had to make a guess, are we or aren't we? Tucker's dark eyebrows furrowed. Keep it in there. Looking up at the older man in front of him. It's a joint investigation, Martin. They're deciding how to divide our efforts once we've spoken to the police and some medical staff that operated there recently. Martin's head tilted forward, shaking slightly in a manner that signified that he wasn't in much of a mood to collaborate with anyone. Excited to work with the esteemed members of Bumfuck Nowhere Mans? The old man let the words creep out of the corner of his mouth with sarcasm as thick as molasses. Madeline smirked as he drove, keeping her eye on the road as she spoke. It does seem like there's nobody driving to or from this place, huh? I don't think we've seen another vehicle in over 40 minutes or so. Martin lifted a hand over his left shoulder and urged his fingers with a jerking curl. Tucker lifted and handed him the folder containing the report, the only thing keeping its contents secret. Either way, being a... What? Its contents secreted away being a paperclip. Martin slid the feeble lock away and spread the report over his lap, clearing his voice to read the report out loud to his meager audience. His voice was deep and hummed with a distinguished fry. Hello, Dr. Kane. I'm reaching out on the behalf of the series of events that have so far proven themselves to be out of the scope of the state and federal capabilities. I'm the chief of police of Mayfield, Georgia. We've received reports since May about the nights growing so dark that traffic has slowed to a miserable crawl. This specific problem has been an increasing issue across the country. As you may already know, we reached out to the local astronomers and the meteorologists to attempt to make some sense of all of this, but all they have to say in summary is the stars are disappearing. The three of them exchange unsure glances between head turns and looking into the rearview mirror above the windshield. Martin's eyes slowly turned back to the pages and resumed reading. As you might have guessed, there's not much police department that can do about such things, but we received some additional reports over the last 40 days of the citizens of Verbena. They have no hospital or police department to call their own, so they rely on our resources to handle their needs. The town is home of 2,100 people on a good year, more often than not abandoned by the young and returned to when they reach retirement. It's a town by the water. Its fishermen seem to make a decent living. As of late, they reported a rash of similar injuries shared by the populace's children. Mayfield medical staff that were dispatched there claimed that they were incapable of bringing the children to our hospital due to agonizing pain. They injured the staff in attempts to break free, seemingly afraid to leave. In addition, over 9 local vessels have gone missing, and ship bearings needing supplies have also failed to show up or return to where they came from. We believe all these matters to be related and request your immediate assistance if you're able. I cannot say too much more, as these matters are considered to be sensitive. Please contact me at your earliest convenience at the personal number listed below. Best regards, Henry Stapleton. The car fell silent. The three searching their thoughts for a possible connection to something that they may have witnessed or read in the past. Can't say I've ever worked with children at the time of the agency, Madeline said flatly, lifting her scarred hand to scratch the corner of her nose. You're telling me a bunch of EMS couldn't get children under control and take them to the hospital? Martin had flipped over the copy of the chief's letter and sorted through the next few leaves of paper, speaking from beneath his mustache as his brow hung low over his cheekbones like an old hound. Kids can be a lot stronger than you might think, even stronger when afraid. You could barely keep control of that crazy cat you found in Flagstaff, Mans. Her jaw rolled as if she was turning over to pick on her tongue, nodding in silent agreements. Don't they have a local agency? Why do they have to call us in from Vermont? Martin shrugged. lifting the folder up over his shoulder for Tucker to reunite with the body of documents that came along for the ride. Georgia really is a beautiful place. Wish we could appreciate it without this nasty business hanging over it. Tucker's tired looking eyes would constantly pull the scenery apart as it went by, appreciating the difference in how the verdant foliage presented itself compared to the north. God really has gifted us with a wonderful cut of land. Martin nodded in approval as his elbow lifted to the perch on the edge of the car window. Madeline wasn't a God-fearing Christian by any stretch, but she has seen enough things to know their beliefs weren't entirely unfounded. The rest of the ride only saw clouds gather closer together, darkening the humid Georgian lands as small suburbs and farms swam by their windows. There was a heavy air in the car. They dealt with a lot of things with clear objectives and targets, but never children. It occurred to them all at once that none of them had to truly investigate a real mystery. By the time they were called in anywhere, there was at least a part of the problem already solved. They had to pull apart the yarn from square one. Even Martin hadn't been so confident. They pulled over on a gas station with a child driving a little rocket into the stars. None of them appreciated the irony of it. Madeline and Martin stretching their weary legs as they meandered inside. Tucker walked outside and lit the metal canopy of gas pumps, looking up into the sky. It was difficult to make out being so close to the lights and the clouds huddling together, but it seemed like the heavens were absent. To Tucker, it was like looking onto the pews during winter, when a few too many people got ill around the same time. As he was about to turn away, something at the edge of his vision. A light, shooting up from the ground into the sky. He fully turned to keep his eyes over the tree for a minute or two, rewarded with nothing but that same empty feeling and a small stone of unease in his gut. Tucker returned to the car to fill the tank, and as soon as he was joined by his companions, they all piled into the car and left, grazing on a few snacks and drinks that they had bought from the station. A few minutes after pulling out of the station, it had begun to rain, as if increasing darkness wasn't enough already. The patterning hiss of the rainfall brought a tenacious calm over them, and for a while they had the privilege of emptying their thoughts. Martin eventually fell asleep, but for Madeline and Tucker, it was like driving through the watery ink. The car had slowed to make up for the lack of visibility beyond the headlights. The brief glimpses of railing, ditchings, and the posts emerging from the blackness of the night. Tucker spoke with a quiet, heavy tone. This is the prize for meddling with things we aren't meant to. Madeline would give him a look in the rearview mirror if she didn't have to focus on the road. What are you yapping about, Tuck? Black hair fell forward over his face as he leaned toward her, his head drawn closer between the seats so she could hear him over the raining engine. Think about it. Our job is to solve things that eras ago were a part of life. We interfere with things that had the freedom to do as they pleased, just as we interfered with the natural world and the indigenous people abroad. He sniffed sharply and pushed his palm over his face, fixing his hair. Don't you think maybe we were never meant to get into this line of work? Madeline let that question hang in the air to cook, turning the words over slowly in her own head. Ain't that Bible of yours filled with notions of banishing the darkness, helping people and killing demons? Tucker leaned back and stared out onto the road with her, speaking in a tired but direct fashion. It's not that simple. Contrary to the claims of your performative church aunties, God has a particularity in his mercies. His patience has limits. His wrath is arguably much more present than his other characteristics. A smirk tugged at the corner of Madeline's mouth. It was only refreshing to hear a man of God be so plain about its writings. She wanted to pry a bit, but wasn't sure if a man as tightly wound as Tucker would appreciate implications of being a blasphemer. They both watched the road for what felt like hours, but a sign crept out from the dark on their right. Verbena, 10 miles. Tucker put his hand slowly on Martin's shoulder, trying to shake him awake. Madeline saw what it looked like a bunch of bright green and yellow rocks flick under the car and crunch under them. She thought nothing of it, listening to Martin stir to life as he demanded Tucker to stop touching him. He sat up from his slump, yawning and looking out ahead of them. You'd have to drive in this shit? Take off those sunglasses, you fool. Madeline's eyes flicked up with a blink of communicated a plane. Can't argue with that. She took them off and folded them up and stuffed into the tray behind the gear shifter. They saw a small collection of lights slowly appear along the side of the mountain. Drawing closer, a finally being met with a decorative wooden sign. Welcome to Verbena. You know, I do like the descriptions of this so far. I feel like I am butchering the hell out of a lot of this stuff. But I don't know. I think we're just going to continue. They drove down the winding streets between colorful old coastal homes. They drove slow and downward until the edge of the ocean was barely visible from the lights of homes nearby. It was about 9 p.m. when they were pulled into the harbor, the car slowly slithering to a stop. As they stood up and stretched, they looked around. 5 piers were immediately in view, but the plank walkways disappeared further into the dark. The wood was old, but strong. A small wood and aluminum office lit ahead at the path. Keep it in. Can we get a burp counter for this reading? Please and thank you. Appreciate it. Lit ahead of the parking lot. They approached slowly, the smell of salt and scum that clung to the beams of the pier pricking their nostrils. 3 gray suits emerged from the dark into the pale orange light to the window. An older man with a shaggy beard, sunken eyes, was attending radios. They could hear a bit through the glass as he shakily lifted a microphone. Red Rook, are you there? Hello? This is James Henry, hailing from the port. Hello? He tried a few more informal call-outs through the microphone before slowly putting it down. He looked defeated. Slumping in his chair before a light dunking on the glass shot him back onto his feet. He straightened his small round glasses, leaning forward and sliding the glass to the side. The hell you doing on here at the ass end of the night, stranger? His skin was loose, fragile, dotted with a few birthmarks. Martin spoke, with the depth of his voice cutting through the lapping water and spray. Apologies, James. We're here on the request of the Chief of Police in Mayfield to help your town. We were told to meet you here to find room and board before we get started tomorrow morning. James Henry reached toward a clipboard, tilting up the wall, and leaned close to it. He read whatever was written on it closely. The neon yellow pink of the highlighter ink playing on it, even from a distance. Yes. You're the detectives that the people mentioned a couple days ago. I'll be wrapping up about in an hour and a half. Then you'll be staying with me at my home. I'm the owner of a failed bed and breakfast, so we have some room to spare. Martin nodded respectfully. Much appreciated, sir. Take your time. We'll be out of here once you're good to go. He turned on his heel, walked back toward the car with Tuck and Madly in tow, who were taking in their surroundings. From the harbor looking inland, the mountain stood tall, even a small mountain in the sight to behold. Tiny lights dappled between the branches and leaves of the trees that hid them away from direct view. The colorful tops of the seaside homes, shacks was characteristic of a town like this. Clothes hung out on lines and a few silhouettes sharing cigarettes on their hanging porches. Rust stained every inch of metal they could see. The wood and the stone bearded with age and erosion. This was an old town for sure. Not in the worst nor in the best shape. The history and the sweat of its people could be felt even in the dark. Fishing towns had a way of always being like that. The light from the office flicked off, the sound of jiggling keys slamming a flimsy metal door cutting through the natural landscape. They turned to face the old man that shuffled from behind the tiny office, his heel dragged out and legs never quite lifting off the ground, high enough to avoid the scraping of the gravel. His wobbly voice hummed out, "Follow me, I only live about 2 minutes away from here." He cracked open the door to an old truck, familiar rust singing in the edges of its frame, the caps of the tires. Wherever chrome didn't show, it had a blue and cream body, provoking a bit of appreciation in Martin. He couldn't help but think of how he grew up around vehicles like that, thinking back to his own family as they piled into the car. The truck seemed to struggle to pull away like a mirror of its driver. sputtering to life before a deep growl rumbled from beneath the hood. They followed closely behind. The roads were taken care of in the neighborhood, despite it being such of a out-of-the-way place. They pulled up to the modest two-floor home with cracked sky blue paint. A faded sign with the ornamental carvings sat out front with a beautiful woman. A curly hair waved as passerbys. A sun-bleached poster in the dusty glass pane showed a plane flying over her head. Plain Jane's B&B was printed in bold white lettering. It was a simple charm only places like this could use to any effect. As they all walked into the building, the dark reception room and hallways all lit with one flick of a wall switch. Dozens and dozens of pictures and portraits hung from the walls. No rhyme or reason to the order of what was in the frames. They were all pictures of places he traveled to, events he went to, local get-togethers. James Henry appeared in most of them at various stages of life, some of them including a young blonde woman with a wide smile and others including children, and those clearly close to family. Martin seemed to notice right away that James called out to nobody at all, ushering them in, taking them down the hall and door to the right. You folks can sleep on the ground floor so you don't need to haul your junk upstairs. While Madeline and Tucker made small talk, Marion was staring at the various photographs hanging up on the wall. It was like watching someone's life pass by in real time, feeling the sting of his decision to not start a family of his own. He was married to his work. It was a long and hard-earned career, but couldn't hold a candle to having some kids of his own. The opportunity has long since passed him, his eyes shifting towards the floor. Anything you need before I turn in? James asked softly to Martin, who turned with a look that his colleagues had rarely seen prior. No, I'm alright. Thank you again. He retreated behind his door with no words to Madeline or Tucker. They looked at one another and decided not to pry, both putting their things away in their respective rooms before emerging to have a smoke outside of the entrance. They spent the remainder of their evening just taking in what little they could see, their plume of smoke vanishing less than a couple feet away into the night. The rain would gently persist through the night, almost a mist coming down. The night would go by without disturbance. The following day, even more gray and dreary than the dreary? I promise I'm not dyslexic. Dreary than the last. Dreary. It's shitty weather. Tucker was the first to wake up, never sleeping any longer than 6 hours on average. He spent the morning speaking to James, even helping him setting up the tables for breakfast. By the time everyone else had awoke, the breakfast spread has already been placed. Scrambled eggs, roasted canned meat, some vegetables were there for the taking. Martin rewarmed his food in the guest microwave while Madeline created a cup of black coffee like precious cargo. Spoken outside with some difficulty, by the time she came back, and the top of her head and shoulders were damp, the tops had every cigarette soaked through. She sat down with a plop, a hand clawing her forehead like a talon as she sighed. She wasn't much of a morning person. We got to go meet Detective Leslie Cramp in about an hour, Tucker spoke softly, but punctuality characteristic of his corporate assistant. What? He lifted his plates and turned them away to the kitchen, Martin flicking out his arms to fish the wristwatch up from his sleeve. He confirmed the time, returning to his plate, cold coffee with a weary look about him. Martin spoke as he stared at his plate, pushing apart scrambled eggs like he was looking for something underneath them. So, James, where are the wife and kids? James leaned up from his desk nearby, correcting his glasses as he shakenly responded, a bit loudly, in that way where you can tell someone was hard of hearing. Oh, my wife returned to the Lord almost 10 years ago now. Martin's fork stopped, his brows lowered almost apologetically. I'm sorry to hear that, James. The old man waved his hand playfully. Shoot, we all have the time, don't we? My son is in the Air Force and my 2 daughters left for Washington. I have no idea what they're up to. They don't call much. His eyes turned to the floor sadly, his palm striking the bottom of the pack of cigarettes with decades of habit behind the motion. So, James, have you heard anything about the kids? The old man pulled his mustache as he took the chair previously sat by Tucker. His weathered and beaten arms rested on the tablecloth, the joints in his hands bulging as hard as rocks. I'm not particularly intimate with the details, but some of the people down at the docks talked their frustrations with the little ones staring at the stun. Madeline's eyes looked up, tilting back her head to slurp a little more coffee as she began to show more interest in the conversation. Staring at the sun? Repeated Martin in a confused tone. His features screwed to their center, his eyes whipping to the different corners of his old eyes as if to search for memories neatly filled away in the back of his head. Tucker stood nearby with his arms crossed, speaking up to give the old man some peace to eat his breakfast. I spoke to him about it in a little bit before you woke up. Apparently there's soreness and tenderness around their eyes after staring into it. I feel like that's pretty normal. You know what, guys? I want you to all go outside, go start staring at the sun. I'm joking, by the way. That's a complete joke. Please do not do that. I do not recommend that. Izlas VVT does not recommend that. Apparently there's a soreness and tenderness around their eyes after staring into it. After the inflammation, they hide away in their houses and don't come back out. That's what the EMS were dealing with. The old man nodded, then pointed his fork to Tucker, then back to Martin. Some of the kids also went missing in the night, but nobody likes to talk about it much to the cops or the spooks that come along. Madeline looked confused for a minute, astonished at Martin's lack of offense to the term just aimed at them. He must have noticed her expression for a minute. Holding up a hand, relax, Mads. He's old. He's referring to the FBI, not... Yeah. Like a professional, he pushed away the discomfort as soon as it came. James looking at both of them in confusion until it hit him. His mouth was finally visible under all that wiry facial hair. No. I'm mighty sorry about that, Mr. Martin. Martin nodded to the old man. Don't worry about it. I know the difference between you and someone that doesn't appreciate my type. Burp counter. Madeline's eyes turned away awkwardly. Tucker was all too used to the insensitive mannerisms of old people, having been so closely tied to the church. Breakfast came and went, a key being issued to them so that they can return when they please. James hobbled into his truck and took off to work. Investigation or not, the world didn't stop spinning for him. As his truck puttered away, they all reluctantly looked up at the door and approached the car. Do you have the address, Tuck? Madeline asked as she reached for the door. He nodded and handed her a printed paper map. Her hand withdrew, looking up the street, then back to the paper. It says here we're meeting the detective is 3 streets uphill. We could just walk. Martin opened the door and spoke as he dropped his weight into the seat. Mads, if you think I'm walking my old ass in this weather in this suit, you're sorely mistaken. She rolled her eyes and got it. Tucker following suit. The car hummed to life effortlessly. The little sedan they drove everywhere quiet in comparison to the other vehicles on the road. They drove uphill over the road, cracks putted in tar, sprouting little plants at its edges. The streets were so cramped there with barely enough room for 2 lanes. Parked cars causing drivers to have to take turns driving around one another, just not to bumper check one each other. As they pulled up and they saw 2 dark tan cars parked in the front of the house, 2 well-dressed gentlemen speaking to a clean-shaven man and a shaggy woman that hung in the doorway. They parked nearby to give the other cars a little more room to maneuver. While walking up to who they presumed were the detectives they had to meet. You law with the ATV, said the younger of the 2 detectives, but not by much. He was a man with pink cheeks and a receding brow hair. His nose was pudgy and sat between 2 cheeks. All 3 of them shook hands as Martin spoke. That would be us, Agent Hunt, Jules, Gibbs. We were sent here to answer a call for assistance by the Mayfield Police Department about the situation that needed our particular skills. I'm kind of so curious, sorry for the immersion break, but it's I'm kind of curious, what particular skills are they talking about? Is there a known level of supernatural when it comes to this universe? I don't know. I guess we'll see what kind of skills they got. As the older, shorter detective continued to talk, the man, his partner spoke. As Leslie Cramp, I'm Jacob Rickard. We were just speaking to the Masons about what happened to their boys. He leaned his head up to speak to the woman in the doorway. Angela, is that right? Could you possibly talk to these fine folks here while we finish our report with your husband? She nodded reluctantly, quietly shutting the door behind her as she walked down the warped wooden steps toward them. She had black hair with a sheen like a crow's wing, disheveled, like she would had the car window open after a long drive. She was timid, her dark brown eyes showing bags beneath them. Whatever she'd been through recently, it was clear she had slept so little. Martin stepped forward, shaking hands with the anxious Angela. Ma'am, we're here to discuss what might be the matter with your child and what you might think you know about the other children. Is that alright? She nodded slowly, likely calmed by the charisma and deep timbre of an older gentleman. Martin often spoke on behalf of his teammates as he had the most experience with speaking with people on the job. Despite his resemblance to an old cranky dog, he has a charisma that could be turned on and off at his whim. So, what happened to your kid? When did it all start? She pushed her hair out of her face, her eyes showing that she was tired of talking about this, but cooperated nonetheless. 2 kids, both of my sons. One went missing a few nights ago. The police can't find him. Polly. She looked around sadly as if to hope he would materialize out of thin air, walk down the street, anything. Her sad gaze turned down to her hands, which fidgeted as she spoke. He was the oldest of the 2. My youngest is in the bedroom. They said they were staring at the sun together because the other kids at school were doing it too. They complained about sharp headaches. Their fathers told them to never do it again. They went into the rooms after dinner, and the past week or so they just kept complaining about the headache getting worse. The edges of their eyes were red and swollen like some infection. With the last word, mucus cut in through her speech, her palm clasping over her mouth and nose. She was holding back tears. She spoke from behind her fingers. Polly's eyes deflated like there was nothing in them, and he couldn't feel them. The night before he disappeared, there was just skin. Madeline's nose wrinkled in disgust. Tucker scribed away at the note. He apparently had a hand on Martin, was consumed with the terror of grief written all over her face. Jamie's eyes are doing the same. We don't know what to do. He's been staring at the front door from his bedroom all day. His father went and installed a stronger bolt lock to keep him in. I've stayed up every night since Polly left. I haven't slept. She choked back more phlegm, crying at the ground, and her tears struck the patchy grass at her feet. Martin placed a large, steady hand on her shoulder. Miss Manson, we'd like to meet Jamie and get a look for ourselves. Is that okay? She looked up, wiping her eyes, speaking through her sobs and small, ugly coughs. He doesn't do well with a lot of people. Medley stepped in, forward, unhooking her gun. What? Yeah, we're not gonna shoot the kid, right? Okay. He doesn't do well with a lot of people. Madeline stepped forward, unhooking her gun belt and handing it back to Tucker. Let me try, ma'am. Kids tend to do well with women. I have a few nieces and nephews that I talk to on the regular. Angela nodded, shuffling over to the door to allow her in. Dude, okay, I kind of got scared there. No, yeah, I don't think they were gonna shoot kids. No, nah. Nah. All right, back to the story. How are we doing on our burp counter? Everything good there? How many we got on screen, Carter? All right, back to the story. The tall woman that was Madeline had leaned under the door, a bit remorseful when she saw her dirty shoe prints staining the clean carpet. It was a modest home filled with trinkets, wall photos, and TV surrounded in various furniture. Toys littered on the floor, some snacks half-eaten sat where the boys had clearly frequented. She stepped over the delicate playthings, following Angela to the frame of the boys' bedroom. Angela called in softly, swiftly, pushing away the pain and anxiety that was her voice moments ago. Jamie? Sweetie? We have a visitor here that wants to see you. A small, pained whimper rose from beneath a nest of cheap blankets on the small bed on the bottom bunk. Madeline slowly stepped in a small wave. Hey, Jamie, I just want to get a look at you, see if you're okay. Can I come see you? The blanket shuffled around, the sluggish arm of a young boy punching through the fabric, pulling the rest of it off of him in a dramatic, childish way. His legs hung over the side of the bed, looking up and seeing the monster of a woman stand in the doorway. He nodded. Looking down at his feet and the carpet, the room smelled of cheap plastic toys and freshly disturbed dust from vacuuming. Madeli's shadow had consumed the small figure of the boy, his dark face unable to see well when he looked up briefly. Madeli quietly knelt in front of him, leaning in to get a good look. When the dim light from the living room touched the boy's face, from her leaning slightly out of the way, he shrieked in pain, in the way nobody would ever want to hear. It was almost like the sound of a rabbit make when a pair of jaws shut tight over its back, gut-wrenching, giving way to an overwhelming sense of dread. Madeli leaned back up to block the light from the door, his mother quickly shutting the door behind her and clenching her hands to fight the urge to push her away to her son. The child had whipped around, trying to dig back under his blankets. Madeli fighting the urge to show weakness as she reached out. The boy smacked away her hand, briefly turning back to her. Her jaw dropped. The brief look she got at the Jamie before crawling under his blanket pile was something she'd never forget. The boy's eyeballs. Is that my cat? Oh, dude, I don't know. I got freaked out. I think I'm getting a little freaked out. I think the hairs on my skin kind of just went up. I'm fine. It's a good story though. Okay. And the boy's eyeballs were deflated, partially drooling out of the corner of the sockets. The edges of his eyes were so inflamed that they formed a puffy pink ring around the socket. The mother saw her hand that was smacked away hanging there in midair. The disbelief must have charged the air between them. His hand was also hot to the touch, and the small exhales of the blanket pile lifting and shutting pushed hot air from beneath them. Miss Mason, how long has he been like this? Angela covered her face and spoke from behind them. I don't know, more than a week? It keeps getting worse. Madeli stood up slowly, knocking when not to push her luck. Shock of what she saw overpowered her. Thankfully, that she didn't get too good of a look after all. He's burning up, like really burning up. When did this start? Angela looked fearfully at the blanket pile, rushing over to him to reach under the tut. My cat is in here. 1 second. Take a pause. He was burning up, like really burning up. When did that start? Angela looked fearfully at the blanket pile, rushing over to him to reach under and touch him. She gasped at what she felt when she held her son's hand. He wasn't this bad last night. There was a smell that was picking up in the room that Madeli hadn't noticed before. It's like being too close to someone's morning breath. It's hard to describe, but it was unpleasant. Thank you, Miss Manson. I won't stress your boy any further. Angela had already turned to crawl under the blankets to hold her boy, now responding as Madeli shut the door behind her. She stepped out in the gray street once more, looking down at the ground, absorbing at what she just saw. It was like her ears were ringing. She couldn't hear anyone or see anything. A light thumping pressed on her shoulder, repeatedly probing until she heard Tucker bark, "Mads! But pay the fuck attention." She snapped out of her momentary daze, looking at her gun belt being handed back to her. "Yeah, thanks. Sorry about that." She reattached it around her waist, looking down at Tucker and pulling away from the other conversation to talk to him. Marion joined the conversation with Detective Leslie and Jacob, all three of them bouncing information one off of another, as the father gave his account of the event. "So, Mr. Mason, you've seen no kids walking around at night? None at all?" Burp counter. The shaven man spoke without hesitation. "None at all, Les. You know, I'd say something if I did. When I get off of work, I just go straight to bed. I haven't seen the nightlife in over a decade." Leslie nodded as his eyes stared through the space, searching for his thoughts. "Well, Greg, if we find your boy, we'll call you right away. You have my word. I will find Polly." Martin looked at Greg and spoke on his own concerns. "You said friends of your boys were encouraging this behavior?" He nodded, an exhausted look on his face, at his red nose tilted back and forth. "Yeah, man, it's weird stuff. You know how kids like to copy each other." I yelled at them to tell them how stupid they were, that they end up with glasses or something. I didn't expect that. All of them are hiding away in their houses or missing too now. He looked defeated, like his lack of vigilance on the matter had been responsible for the whole thing. He was trying to hold it together. It was clear to Martin that he at least blamed himself partially for what was happening. His large hand rested on Greg's shoulder, his other hand extending a contact card. "Mr. Manson, we will find your boy. Let's just make sure the others stay in the meantime. I'll call you from the number on this card should we find anything that may help us find your boy. Greg searched Martin's eyes for assurance, desperate for some kind of guarantee. He quietly nodded and took the card between the index and the thumb, turning it around. He looked like a child himself, standing there helplessly. Jacob spoke up last. We're going to interview some of the other families. We'll let you know if something comes up. Meanwhile, Tucker was writing down things that Madeline recounted, contending with the fact that her confidence and detachment were missing from her demeanor. Mads, get it together. They rely on us to handle shit like this. She shot him a frustrated look. You don't know what I saw, Tuck. Eyes don't just melt, hang loose like that. That kid was miserable. I've never seen anything like that before. Tucker looked over his shoulder and nodded. Look, I get it, but these people need to know we're confident. We can't afford any panic. People do crazy shit when they see panic. She nodded and wiped both her gloved hands over her face as if to cast the horror of what she had seen off like mud. She flicked her fingers, putting her hands on her hips with a loud exhale. Martin approached behind them, departing from the detectives as they got in their car. Tucker looked at Martin. Where to now? Martin folded some notes and tucked them away in his suit's inner pockets. The harbor. We need to speak to every man and woman working these docks. Mads, what did you see in there? I know when you're off. She hissed air through her nose. He had a way of utterly disregarding tension. He cut through it. He has no room for it on his own table. Martin. The kid's eyes were melted, hanging like a wet balloon or something. His eyes were all red and swollen like burned blisters around the edges. His skin was hot to the touch, not like a fever, but something worse. She crossed her arms and looked away. I can't fucking imagine what all these folks are going through, having to watch the inside of their kids' heads just melt. Martin blinked below his heavy brows, his eyes cast with a bit of a shadow of shape of them. He looked at the ground and opened the car door. I don't know what's going on, but we can't afford to fuck up. These people are depending on us. When we get to the docks, I'm going to insist that they suspend school for the next 2 weeks. Make a local mandate that children must stay in their houses, no looking at the sun, or take measures to prevent those kids from leaving at night. Tucker and Madeline nodded, looking at one another before they piled up in the car. The drive felt agonizingly slow, even for a couple minutes. Tucker had noticed just how long his colleagues had been feeling. It was up to him to hold it together in the face of these tragedies. They pulled up to the lot before the harbor, a familiar old man in a raincoat speaking to the two detectives. As the three of them got out of the car and walked over, the rain came down a little harder. Martin sighed as an old man motioned them over, not looking forward to tending his suit later. As they walked up to old James, he spoke to them with sad urgency. 2 more ships haven't come back. Tucker looked at him with incredulity. You let them leave after all the other ones? The old man looked down at the ground, his old shaking hands gripping the crinkled papers. We had to send someone to look. We couldn't just leave them out there in case they were survivors. Martin looked out to the docks. Only 2 boats remained. There were a lot of piers for such a small place, the darkness from the previous night swallowed by a winding pass of planks. There was enough room for more than 30 smaller boats or a few bigger ones. Shit. Martin reached up to scratch his jaw. He didn't need more complications right now. He didn't know how to tackle both missing children and missing sailors. Just as he was about to give a pause to think, a loud beeping came from inside the office. James rushed up for the door as fast as he could, picking up the headphones of the microphone as fast as he could. Yes, hello? A voice tried to fight a way through the frayed audio and static. Hello? James, this is Malcolm of the Savage Dam. We can't... James slapped the top of the radio as if it would help at all. James, give the radio another whack. Malcolm! Nothing came back but more static. He sat in his chair just staring at the console. Tucker tilted his head at the radio patch, and the Malcolm for the brief time that it had, speaking quickly. That was weird. That sounded strange. Martin and Madeline turned to him. You mind clarifying, Tucker? Martin was short on patience and not fond of purposefully vague statements. That static sounded like something was wrong with the auto, like when someone covers their mouth when talking. Madeline's eyebrow went up. Martin looking away with the roll of his eyes. What do you know about radios, Tucker? Come on, we have a key. And the radio shrieked again. James wincing and taking off the headset to protect what little hearing he had left. Fucking thing! What? Hello? If you can still hear me, James, our navigation equipment doesn't seem to work at all. We can't see enough stars to find our way back either. The radio died again. The three are pushing the office window now to listen. What? The same strange sound kept cutting through the old static, as if something didn't want the man on the other side to be heard. James looked at his old radio, leaning on his elbows and his palms held onto the balding head. Martin spoke from the corner of his mouth. Where are most of the dock workers? The ones that aren't on the missing boats? James looked up weakly, searching his thoughts, stumbling through his words. Yeah, the bar. The North Wind pub. A little down the way. They always hang out there before and after work. But now that nobody is going out, they just kind of stay there instead of home. Martin nodded, looking back onto the other two. Mads, you and I are going to look around the docks. She squinted and looked out onto the piers, nodding reluctantly. She didn't enjoy the water much. Tuck, you go to the bar and talk to those fine gentlemen. Get ignorant if you need to convince anyone you're not with the cops. Tucker nodded, taking off the top of his suit to reveal the sleeveless white top and overall straps. Martin took it, all of them splitting to do their part. Thunder rolled overhead as the rain got heavier. Martin shook his head, speaking sort of out loud. What the fuck is going on in this place? Alright, that is story 1. This is part 1 of what seems to be a series called The Sun Wept. Carter, I'm gonna send you an image if you guys want to kind of show them this illustration. It kind of does look pretty cool. Alright, that's our first story. This is gonna be a multi-part series. Looks like they only released one, weirdly enough. But listen guys, I just don't want to leave you on a cliffhanger. I'm sorry, but I have to. But let me do something for you guys. I think let's try to find a small story. Alright guys, hello. We're here for another story from Tales of the Creep. This is by Purpleless Duty. He's a writer, seems super amazing. And this kind of title caught me. It's a little bit of a shorter story just because we're going to be combining it with the Sun one. But this thing called I Went Hunting Near My Brother's Farm. Creature feature. Yeah, it looks to be a little bit of a shorter story. So why don't we just get right into it? My bad. I went hunting near my brother's farm. I used to be an avid hunter. That was a few years ago before life got in the way. Maybe that's why my brother asked me to help with the problem of his. He had mentioned that a wolf had killed some of his farm animals when we were catching up over the phone. I didn't really ask questions, probably because it was a good excuse for me to get out there and hunt once again. So I loaded up my gear and my rifle in the truck and got started onto the drive out to my brother's farm. Since he lives in the middle of nowhere, the drive there was a long one, and by the time I pulled into the driveway, it was already starting to get dark. My brother stepped out to meet me and helped me carry my stuff inside. We made small talk, nothing worthwhile to write down, and then he showed me the animal pen. That's where it broke the fence, he said, pointing at the broken segment. I leaned in to get a better look, and even in the fading daylight, I could tell the tracks left behind were from a wolf. Yeah, definitely a wolf, I told him. Although a bit strange for one to come this close to break down the fence. I continued as I leaned in closer. I started to trail off. What? My brother asked. Never mind. Let's get inside, it's getting cold, I told him. Dismissing the oddity of the tracks as a trick of the light, I followed my brother back inside. As I got settled into the guest room, I couldn't stop thinking about the trail. It was odd. Half of the paw prints were sunken deeper into the soil than the others. Despite my thoughts looping on the trail, I did eventually manage to fall asleep. I overslept that day, and when I woke up, my brother told me that he had let me sleep, as the long drive must have taken a lot out of me. And he was probably right. After some breakfast, or lunch more accurately, I went and gathered my gear, checking that my rifle was loaded and everything was in order, before heading into the forest to track the wolf. It took me a minute to get deep enough into the woods that I couldn't see a single sign of civilization anymore. Thinking back, that was probably when I should have figured out something was wrong. Not the lack of civilization, but the lack that I couldn't hear anything. You think that it would be quiet in nature, and it is, but it was the wrong kind of quiet. The kind of quiet that you get after the gunshot, when the birds fly away and all the small animals hide. It was dead quiet. But at the time, I paid no mind. As I continued to the trail, the wolf I had been traveling upwind, which I thought was a good thing, as it meant that the wolf was less likely to smell me. As the hours crept by, no sign of the wolf. I was starting to get frustrated. I didn't want to spend the entire day trekking through the woods. The sun had started to wane. The shadows were growing long, but just as I was considering turning around and heading back, I saw it. Or at least, I thought I saw it. It was a silhouette against the reddish sky, unmistakably that of a wolf, but what gave me pause was the shape of it. The back half of it was skinny, downright emaciated, while its front half was large, almost bloated. I couldn't make sense of the shape, so I grabbed my rifle and aimed and took the shot. At first I thought I had missed, but I don't know why my cat's scratching at my door and it's kind of freaking me out. At first I thought I had missed and there wasn't any reaction from the wolf, but that was strange. Surely it couldn't have been reacted to my gunshot even if it wasn't a hit. I told myself that maybe it was deaf and cycled the action of my rifle before aiming it again. This time I was sure I'd hit it, but again, there wasn't any movement. I was starting to think I had lost my mind. I was shooting at an oddly shaped pile of wood. So I grabbed my flashlight from my pocket and clicked it on. At first, the beam of light fell onto the backside of the animal, which confirmed to me that I was in fact shooting at a tree, although it was little comfort at the time, as I could feel a cold sweat on the back of my neck. I could see the bones under its furred hide. The hide stretched taut over its joints. I moved the light illuminating its chest. The first thing that came to mind at that moment was a bloated cow, but it sure as hell wasn't full of gas, as I could see the 2 bullet holes in it, oozing God knows what. At this point I probably should have already tucked tail and ran back, but instead I moved the flashlight towards its head. The moment I lit up, its face felt like eternity. Its eyes gleaming back at me, its bottom jaw misshapen, too large, hanging loosely, some kind of mucus dripping down from its open maw. It must have been only seconds after I had lit up its head that I ran. I never ran so fast in my life, even as I was stumbling through the woods, desperate to put more distance between myself and whatever abomination I had seen. I could hear the sound of splintering twigs and releasing breath. The rancid smell burned in my throat as I gasped for a breath. Its foul breath on the back of my neck. I have no idea how I ran that thing, but somehow I made it back to the yard of my brother's farm. As soon as I came into the yard, he was already running up to meet me, undoubtedly wanting to ask me if I got the wolf, but he stopped halfway, probably because I looked like I had seen a ghost, or worse. I had gotten into my truck without saying a word and I drove off. What the fuck? He just left his brother? Huh? I'm still not sure how I didn't crash during the long drive back home, but somehow I didn't. It took me a few days before I could muster up the courage to call my brother. I called him every day for a week now, but he never answers. Oh, so he got his brother killed. What? Alright, I went hunting near my brother's farm, my purposeless duty. I had to say, this is not gonna be as long as the video. I think, okay, it's still gonna be at least like 40 minutes, but I was looking, and I'm definitely gonna be keeping my eye out for the Sun Wept. That seems like a really interesting story. I don't know if you guys do like it, but let me know what you guys think. Do you guys want me to continue kind of just like speaking on the horror stories? Besides that, you guys are amazing. I love all of you. Remember, drink your food, eat your water. You guys are all amazing. Bye-bye. Carter, say bye. Bye. Bye.